Hi, I'm Helen Walton. I'm Chief Commercial Officer and one of the founders at G Games. We deliver a variety of games to the iGaming industry, and at the moment we're working on multiplayer slots.
Hi, my name's Kevin Dale. I'm CEO of eGamingMonitor.com. I've been 20 years in the industry, marketing director at the likes of Betfair and Sporting Bet, and CEO at Game Account, GAM PLC. And eGaming Monitor, we monitor games, 30,000 games across 1,200 operators from 1,200 suppliers.
Innovation, there's a really nice kind of classic series of bits of marketing work where you look down the list of areas you can innovate in, from brand design, all the way down to service and kind of aftercare service. And I think people in slot development, studios in slot development, have looked quite hard at a lot of those. And you can see various companies who kind of became well known for innovating in particular areas. But I would argue that almost all of these are incremental innovations. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe there has been anyone yet in slots who has done disruptive innovation at all in the last, since somebody managed to put the first slot machine online. I would say that was the last piece of disruptive channel innovation. And in terms of design, no, moving from 3 reels to 4 and to 5, and from 3 lines to 10 to 15 to 243 ways to 1096 ways to whatever it is you like. These are, you can see how they are incremental step innovations by just the way of describing them.
What about things like gamification and so on? Would you call those highly innovative? So doing slots tournaments as technology, would you not say that? Because there are quite a few people doing it. I quite like that sort of, it's not innovation in slots necessarily as such. It's innovation around the outside of games. Do you not see that there's a bit happening in that area?
Well, I certainly think there's a zeitgeist. Let's make it slightly broader than tournaments, because it's the area, of course, that we're working on at the moment, which is multiplayer. So, yes, I think if anyone truly cracks changing a slot from a single player experience to a multiplayer experience, in which numerous people are able to enjoy competition, collaboration, both are different interesting types of multiplayer, the community pride and mastery that I think are inherent in multiplayer, then yes, I would call that a breakthrough innovation. And I think it is interesting that lots of us in the industry are working on it. I think there is clearly a zeitgeist around it. And I think that is partly because some of the issues that we've talked about with scale, margin squeeze, regulation are to some extent giving us something of a burning platform, a need to innovate,
do something new,
to attract new players and to retain them more effectively, and to give ourselves a true distance from the competition. Because I think of the many challenges and threats that there are to the industry, we should be absolutely looking externally to learn what others did, whether that's how fintech and insurtech deal with a highly regulated marketplace and still manage to find innovation, whether it's looking to how other industries that have been accused of causing societal damage and harm have managed to reinvent themselves and find a pride in what they do, or whether it's looking to a broader, more holistic form of entertainment and understanding how there might be different models, even different commercial models, in how we see ourselves as an industry in that sense. I think we should absolutely be looking externally. It would be one of my key criticisms of the gambling industry that it has been too inward looking.
It's very inward looking. No, absolutely. No, I mean,
we don't hire enough people from outside the industry, for example.
This is very true. This is very true. No, I mean, if you look at those sort of related industries to us, like esports, I mean, I'm a big fan of esports, and I've come from a sort of skill gaming, so backgammon, online P2P backgammon, gin rummy and so on, background too. And I like the whole social gaming space. And each one of those has got a different business model, hasn't it? And they all work in their own way, but very, very, in a very different sort of way. And that whole crossover. I mean, I noticed sort of Evo plays Star Guardians. I don't know if you have a little play on that. It's a way towards that sort of whole idea. And there's a few examples out there. I'm not singling them out in particular, but I quite like that whole idea of trying to sort of build a crossover product. It's not just about sort of finding new demographics and so on as segments. It's about trying to find that new bit of magic, really, that appeals to people who buy content on esports, and social casino largely are about sort of buying things of relatively limited value, aren't they, or monetary value, let's say, is their business model, but it goes to the motivations of why they do that. And I think Star Guardians is a step in the direction of sort of crossing over into other genres. But I think we've got a hell of a long way to go, because if you take things like fishing and hunting games, I don't know if you've ever played any of those. They're absolutely massive in China. And Far East, absolutely massive. So they've been going a while, So in that sense, Star Guardians is of that ilk. There's the actual skill component of what you actually put into a game has little to no bearing, I don't believe, on the actual outcome of what you win or what you don't win. So that there's sort of the choice components, and then there's whether the skill component has any impact on the return to player value components. And all of this is quite a sort of complex conundrum for people. But I think whoever cracks that, it's an exciting one for me. I like that.
I mean, I can give you some tiny snippets of data, and I'm certainly not pretending that we've completely cracked it, but we have, as you know, produced some skill games in the past, and we've produced some choice games in the past. And I can certainly tell you the ones that do better than others, where we've got that balance right, and ones where we got the balance wrong, where the skill level was too high, and where players felt that because they'd done quite well, they ought to have won, where actually they needed to do perfectly in order to have a chance of winning, and that doesn't work. So balancing chance and skill, balancing choice and ease of play, these are difficult questions, and they're also definitely not the only solution. But given that all of us know games in which balance of skill and chance are spectacularly successful in gambling, and poker is an example of it, to some extent it's about what wins the luck battle of people's attention, what becomes the exciting thing that people just happen to want to play. I don't think there's anything magical about Candy Crush, for example, that made it the breakout success of the social gaming world. I'm not saying it's a brilliantly well-designed game. It is, and has vast amounts of thought put into it. But there are many such games with great design and vast amounts of thoughts out there. Sometimes things just take off in and of themselves. And I definitely believe that the what is gambling's next poker is a really valid question to ask, and I have no doubt that there is something. Sure, I hope it's us.
I'm with you there, really. I mean, I launched a slot game once that was too skillful. It was a beautiful game. I mean, sort of thing that really appealed to me, but maybe I'm not
fatal.
I'm not my typical audience. So, but you have to design the RTP around the fact that it can't be exploited and you can't actually lose money on it. So it had a sort of theoretical RTP of something like 95%, and we were hitting sort of around 82%. It was too complicated. A professional poker player would have cracked it, because it was card based and 3 card, and you had nudges and holes, and, and you could see what you could nudge down to, and it was just too much. So, but the one that interests me, and I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, and let's call it dynamic RTP for now. I like the concept in esports gaming where you have the actual outcome of what you're playing at any given time is dynamically influenced by your recent performance. And so if you're playing a first-person shooter game and you're playing against other people and you keep dying too frequently, they will then match you in your next games against people who have a lower kill death ratio, so easier to play against. So your playing experience is improved depending on on your success rate effectively. How do you think that sort of idea, because we do some sort of dynamic marketing towards people with high or low success rates, so people have had sort of poor losses and so on, tend to get sort of more of the promotions, and they go into the sort of automated
here, have some free spins.
The automated sort of marketing,
just had a rubbish experience.
Interestingly, marketing experience. I suppose I'm asking you really from an in-game perspective now, as opposed to a marketing perspective. Is there an opportunity there for actually making RTP effectively dynamic based around people?
Yes. We wouldn't have put it quite the same way, but interestingly, it is something that we are working on very specifically at the moment for our single player games. We're calling it Powerups, and it's about a series of different features that can be triggered through events in game, or indeed triggered at random. It's a kind of a combination, and it has 2 different real kind of rationales behind it. One of which is a player-led one, which is that players feel the more loyal they are to a game, the better they ought to do. And this would, in essence, allow a kind of variable RTP, but in order to reward a player who's enjoying the game more than one who's not playing for very long. And the kind of the second part of it is that players quite often get bored by the shape of a slot. They know, okay, I'm waiting for this thing to happen for this bonus game or for these set of free spins. And once that's happened, I'm going to leave. And it becomes a bit of a grind to get to the thing that you're waiting for, which is why so many of the VIP players and so many of the streamers are very into bonus buys, which have a whole set of alternative problems kind of related to them. So one of the things that we think having different features that can be triggered at different points throughout the base game is that it enables us to ensure that one set of 200 spins is never the same as a differing 200 spin set.
But that's not purely based on randomness. It's based on the performance of that individual session spin history.
It would be a combination of the 2.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. I like that stuff. I'm not sure quite how much the regulators are like it, but
it's promotional, because anything that's done promotionally, just as you can offer people some free spins as a promotion, so you could do something that's a promotion in game as well.
Okay.
But so how do we do things that make your experience as a player more interesting, not just through focusing on the VIP player who is chasing the bonus or is prepared to spend money to get the bonus very quickly, but how do you make, let's call them the everyday players' experience, as interesting and as satisfying as possible? And what are some of the incremental innovations that will do that?
Yeah,
I agree with you that there are kind of things that are about promotion and tournaments and tools and service that is good for the operator as well as things that are incremental innovations in game. And then, of course, what are the big disruptive innovations that might be coming from inside or from outside the industry?
No, totally agree. And I think a lot of it goes back to when you're actually looking at innovation as you and I think we've discussed this before, as is the whole motivations behind why people do things in the first place. So, you can change your mechanics, you can change your social or gamification or multiplayer components, you can change your colors, you can change your RTP hit frequencies, etc., 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 etc. I mean, there's 100 different things you can change, but if you don't start with which players, back to your point about segmentation, if you don't start with which players are playing this and what are their key motivations, so not just which players geographically and demographically, but what is their key motivation for playing this game in the first place? Is it excitement? Is it stimulation? Is it learning and achievement progression? Is it community? Is it a low risk reward ratio or a high risk reward ratio, etc., etc.? If we don't map out motivations to segments and then features to motivations times segments, I don't think anyone will actually crack that innovation piece.
And surely that's one of the interesting questions, because for so long, I think a lot of the innovations that we've seen with suppliers in games have been focused not on the end user, not on the player's underlying motivations, but on the operator, on how to gain distribution and position with operators. And don't get me wrong, that's also a perfectly valid commercial area of innovation. But it doesn't necessarily lead to big changes to the product that might appeal differently or change how players use them.
Yeah.